Hello, how are you? Good evening, good night for everybody. We are here on our Saber Movimento, translating, actually speaking Portuguese, the name of our extension project, and something in English like knowledge in movement.
Knowledge in motion. Okay.
And then we are here to talk, starting the activities of this year with John Robson. He is president of the Society of Actuaries, and he is here with us talking about actuarial science. I have to say that our project is from the Universidade Federal Fluminense, UF, and our public university is situated here in Niteroi, Rio de Janeiro, Brazil, and we are having a great opportunity to talk about actuarial science with John Robson.
Okay.
Really, I'm really glad to be here talking with you, and I have to say thank you to you to be here and uh, ac- accepted our invitation. Thank
My
you,
pleasure.
John.
My pleasure.
To start to our conversation, I will ask you if you could talk a little bit about SOA and the importance for an actuary to have the SOA's certifications.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you very much, Fabio, for inviting me. And I'm happy to be here and always happy to spread the word about the Society of Actuaries. We offer our exams in several countries, and we are somewhat of a global organization. So, why should one be interested in our designations? The tradition of fellow started in the United Kingdom a long time ago. The Institute of Actuaries was founded in 1848, and the Actuarial Society of America, which was the first actuarial society in this country, was founded in 1889, and it followed the British tradition. And several countries, Britain, Australia, Canada, the United States, South Africa, a few other countries, Ireland, India, follow that tradition. And a fellow is very well trained. It's a very rigorous program, but you're trained not only in mathematics, but in all of the things that a business needs. And the business that it was built around historically was the insurance and the pensions businesses. So an actuary has come to the actuarial curriculum has several different subjects. There's mathematics, there's statistics, but then there's also economics, and then there's investments, and there's finance, and there is a little biology for those actuaries who will focus on health. They have to know a little biology. And then, of course, there's accounting. And so that's just a few of the subjects that an actuary, a fellow, is trained to cover. And that combination of subjects is unique to the actuarial profession, and it's unique to the needs of insurance and pension. So that is the tradition that the Society of Actuaries is coming from. So basically, my belief is that every country on earth needs a few fellows. Even in Jamaica, there are 12 fellows. Now, they are not all fellows of the Society of Actuaries, fellows of the Institute, sometimes fellows of the Canadian Institute of Actuaries. So my belief is that every country needs a few fellows. In the United States, there's going to be several thousands because we have lots of insurance companies and consulting firms. So not everybody needs to have that many. And so that's where I start. The Society of Actuaries offers an excellent program. We think it's the best in the world. It's certainly best in class. And not only that, but we're also always looking to improve it. So we don't just keep it the same all the time. And we want to improve it so that it keeps up with the new developments are in technology and in the world generally. In life insurance, which is my area, life insurance regulation is getting more complex. And that complexity requires, in my mind, people with the training of a fellow to really manage that properly and make sure that the principles are applied correctly and the right decisions as to assumptions are made. And I refer specifically to IFRS 17. IFRS 17 is, in my experience, the most actuarially complex accounting standard. Interesting, it's not an actuarial standard, it's an accounting standard that we've ever seen. And it's very, very complex. And actuaries or people, the company has to make a number of decisions as to what I call accounting policy decisions as to how to move forward with IFRS 17. And making those decisions is not the sort of thing that accountants can do by themselves. And so it takes a high level of actuarial expertise to be able to just get your IFRS 17 set up inside your company. The only other thing I'll add to that is that if your university has not yet done so for the Society, well, two things. For the Society of Actuaries, for the exams, we do have what are called VEE requirements, validation by education experience. And there are about 3 of them. And basically, a student who is interested in the SOA needs to make sure that they get those. But the hope is that they have done them in college, at the university. So the university needs to make the SOA aware of what courses that they offer that will help the students to meet these VEE requirements. And so if you want more information, Fabio, on the VEE requirements, let me know and I will pass that along and make sure that you have the information. There's a process to go through. The last thing I'll add at this point is that I'm a fellow of the Society of Actuaries, and I became an associate of the Society of Actuaries first and then a fellow. Prior to my becoming an associate, I was not a member of the SOA. I really didn't have any interaction with the SOA until I got my ASA. And recently that has changed. And so now we have 2 categories of membership prior to becoming an ASA. The first is called an affiliate member. And basically anyone can join, any student can join the SOA as an affiliate member. And the other one is a little further on, it's a professional affiliate member. The affiliate member is free, there is no charge, and it allows the student to get familiar with the SOA and the great things that we have to offer. The professional affiliate actually does have a code of conduct, and you become a member after passing the first, I think it's 2 or 3 exams. I'm not sure exactly. So there are 2 levels of membership prior to becoming ASA. And we also offer 3 what we call micro credentials. We're well known for associateship, ASA, fellowship, FSA. But recently we've offered some micro credentials, which are just little reward along the way to associateship, to show, in addition to the exam pass, that you have something to show for the hard work that you're doing. So hopefully I've given you some reasons why you should consider the Society of Actuaries. I'm not hearing you.
It's really nice to hear and to share with you that we have some students from UF that they are getting SOA certifications. It's really nice to share it with you. And before we talk about USA, I would ask you about Jamaica. You born there, so Could you tell a little bit how is the actuarial profession there, and how to do to be an actuary there? Also, how is the market? How is the market for the actuaries in Jamaica?
In Jamaica. Okay. So, in fact, I was born in England, and my parents were Jamaican, and they were college students in England. My father went to Cambridge, and he did a PhD at Cambridge, University of Cambridge, and I was born in Cambridge. And so my parents were Jamaican, and my parents moved. We moved to Canada first for about 6 years, and then my parents separated, and my mother took the 3 children to Jamaica. So I grew up in Jamaica from age 6, and so for practical purposes, I'm Jamaican. That's okay. Now, the profession in Jamaica is small, and that is because there are very few insurance companies. There are 2 consulting firms, locally owned, and I don't think we have any of the foreign consulting. Well, one of them is Eckler, which is based in Canada. I take that back. So Eckler, and one of them is locally owned. And so the profession is very small. There are probably 12 fellows in Jamaica. And there are not that many opportunities. The University of the West Indies in Jamaica has an actuarial science program, and they produce about probably 25 to 30 graduates per year. But there is no way for the actuarial profession to absorb that many students. And so they may end up going into other areas of financial services like investments, or getting to work in a bank, or perhaps even going into accounting. I'm not sure. And so it's very tight, and it's difficult to get into the actual profession in Jamaica, because the need is not that great. But having said that, one of the things that the employers always do is, for the few that do get in, the employers help them to pass their exams. And they help them by paying for the exams, paying for the materials, giving them time off of work to study. And these things are necessary to get to fellowship. Fellowship is it's difficult. And so you need that support. And so the employers do give that, when students are capable of doing that work. So my experience in Jamaica was I benefited from that when I was there. And then I moved to the United States, and I went to work for Nationwide in Columbus, Ohio. And they also provided that sort of actuarial support to help me to get through the exams.
Yeah, I have to put this sound here. Well, talking about the USA, I will ask you, how about is the actuarial career there? And besides, you worked in the insurance market. So could you tell a little bit about how it works there, and your experience in the Minnesota Department of Commerce?
Okay. All right. So, so the United States has lots of insurance companies, and they all use actuaries in one form or another. And there's almost always a chief actuary. Every insurance company is required to have an appointed actuary. And that appointed actuary is a special role in the law. And they have to sign that the reserves are appropriate and the assets being held are appropriate. So it's a very important role that actuaries play in insurance, and a similarly important role in pensions. And so there are generally lots of opportunities here. At the entry level, of course, there are a lot of graduates because we have several actuarial science programs. There may not be jobs for all of them. But once you get in, you can be assured that you're going to get the sort of actuarial support that I talked about. Every person I know that has got to fellowship has had to have that support. So there's, as you're probably aware from the SOA's educational materials, there are several different types of actuary. There's life insurance, there's pensions, there's health insurance, there's property casualty insurance, and then there's more general things, enterprise risk management, group benefits, and so on. And so there are lots of different fields to get into. And so you do have a fair amount of choice in that regard if you are in the US. Now, as a regulator, first of all, before I was a regulator, I spent 20 years working for life insurance companies. And so I was working usually on the reserving side, not so much the pricing side. So I had a lot of experience when I became a regulator. And the job of a regulator is really to make sure that the rules are appropriate. A lot of times the rules may need to be updated. Sometimes you need to put in new rules and improved rules. And so that was my responsibility. Now, the US has a very interesting regulatory setup because each of the 50 states has its own regulator, but they come together under an organization called the National Association of Insurance Commissioners, the NAIC. And so what the NAIC tries to do is to, instead of having 50 different sets of rules, which would be very difficult for the companies, the NAIC tries to harmonize those rules so that we have, just a few sets of rules, which makes it easy for companies to work all around the country. And so I spent a lot of time working for Minnesota on Minnesota-related issues, but I also spent a lot of time serving in the NAIC and working with other regulators from other states on regulation. I was a life insurance regulator, and the main thing that gets regulated in life insurance is the reserves. How are the reserves to be calculated? What is the minimum reserve that a company should set up? So creating the rules around that for the various products is how I spent most of my time as a regulator. And I was a regulator for 5 years, from 2016 to 2021.
And could you talk a little bit about some skills that the actuaries should have? For example, how important is the interdisciplinarity for the actuaries?
The actuarial profession, by definition, is multidisciplinary, because what the actuary does is so you start with mathematics, obviously, because everything is about numbers. And then you add to that statistics or data science, if you like, or if you think of them separately, that's fine. But then an actuary studies economics, an actuary studies accounting, an actuary studies investment, quantitative finance. Why? Because what the actuary is able to do is to bring all of these things together and to provide the advice that the principal, the business leader, whether it's the board of the company or the product manager or the board of a pension plan, to give them advice based on perspectives of all those things combined. So an actuary, the value of an actuary is the ability to combine all of those very different fields. And so that you understand, you figure out what is it that is important to advise, whoever you're providing your advice to. And that's what we do. Actuaries provide advice. So it is by definition multidisciplinary. It's not as if an actuary can only be a data scientist. It's really not just one thing. So what we're finding in terms of skills that you need, which is a slightly different question, we're certainly finding that actuaries, especially younger actuaries, not so much me, I'm retired now, but young actuaries need to know a lot about data science, and they need to know more than they used to have to know. And so those of you who have followed the Society of Actuaries program may know that in 2015, we added some data science to the ASA curriculum. And in 2021, we added more, or we thought there was more skills that our younger students need to have. But being a data scientist is not the same as being an actuary. So but we do need to make sure that they have those skills. So there are certainly technical skills and technical knowledge that you need to have. But we also think that the actuary needs to have what we refer to them as soft skills. And these are communication skills and the ability to explain things that are very complicated in terms that the audience can understand. As someone who is not an actuary, you can't just talk to anyone as if they are an actuary and expect them to understand it. So you have to be able to interpret it into terms that the audience will understand. And so that is a very important skill that an actuary needs to have in order to be successful.
And talk about the USA, for example, a lot of catastrophes and risks that exist there, we don't have it here in Brazil. For example, there were the September 11th, the Katrina, the possibility of the big one in California. So how the insurance market dealt with it in the past, and how it plans to act in the future?
Sure. Well, I'm very glad that Brazil did not have September 11, and I hope you never do.
Yes.
So, and in a way, it may seem like an accident, but remember, it was planned by somebody to do it, unfortunately. But I take your point is, so what we're seeing here in the United States is that when it comes to a lot of natural catastrophes, the frequency of them is more than it used to be. And the problem that presents for the actuary is that usually whenever we try to create an assumption, we go look at the data. We go, what does the data tell us? Well, that's fine, but if the future is not going to be the same as what the data is telling you, that's not going to be sufficient. And so there are some actuaries who are trying to come up with alternative ways to look into, to try and project out different futures that may be different from the past, and use those projections as the basis for determining prices. Now, the challenge is going to be, though, if you are projecting higher frequency of events in the future and perhaps higher severity, then the prices must go up. And the question is if the prices keep going up, they can't just keep going up and going up and going up. So this is a very huge problem, which is, it's very hard. It's not something that actuaries can solve on their own, because climate change and climate risk is due to all kinds of things that we do not control. And so, so these are very interesting questions. There are actuaries trying to deal with them. But you younger folks here, you need to start thinking about these things, because they're going to affect the world that you live in a lot more than it's going to affect. It's probably going to affect me. And so, so yes, we now need to look at different ways of projecting our futures when it comes to issues of climate change and climate risk.
Yes, let's talk a little bit about that. That issue, it's really important. How the market is working right now with this question, with this all this environmental. Oh, my pronounce is really bad.
That's okay.
Environmental
That's all right. That's all right.
stuff.
Well, it's very difficult. I'll give you an example of one of the challenges. In California, and some of you may have heard about this, they've had a lot of wildfires. And that wildfires has burned down people's homes, partly because people choose to live near where the wildfires are. Now, if people wouldn't choose to live there, then there wouldn't be a problem. But hey, people are free in this country to live where they want. And so what the insurance regulator has had to do is to tell the insurance companies that you cannot decline coverage. You have to cover these people. All right. Now, in a way, that is a little hard on the insurance companies. They can't keep covering people at fixed prices for very long. They'll go out of business. So that is not a good answer in the long run. And so there are some things like that that are going on that are not good signs. And probably the best solution is people don't build your houses where they can be affected by wildfires. Don't build houses on the coast where it can be affected by hurricanes or just water level rising. Don't put things there. Try and do something else. And so now these are very, very tough questions, which are not only for actuaries to solve. We can't solve these alone. These are going to take governments and people to rise up and say, hey, we need to do something different than what we're doing today.
Since you started as an actuary, what was the main change that the profession had? And talking about the future, how are the perspectives of the actuarial profession?
Okay. And so I think certainly over the time that I have been an actuary, and I expect it to be so in the future, the basic problems that actuaries deal with are the same. We price insurance products and we establish reserves that ensure that the company is solvent. And then in addition to that, we may have a capital, some surplus management. In the US, it's called RBC. I don't know what it's called there, but there's always some minimum surplus requirement. So the actuaries will always be trying to deal with those areas, one way or another. That's something that we will always do. What will change, of course, is how we do it. And that has to do with the changes in technology, with artificial intelligence and data science, machine learning, which I was reading a little about today. How we do it is going to change, but we're going to deal with the same basic problems. So what has changed in that regard is probably very little. But one big change, I think, has been DEI, diversity, equity, and inclusion. I became aware of diversity back in 1993, many years ago. And it's been very interesting to see how that has expanded and that the actuarial profession and the employers have embraced the principles of diversity, equity, and inclusion. So I would say that is one of the big changes in the way that actuaries see themselves and how they see the world is through those lenses. Related to that, and very recently, there have been several affinity groups that have been formed. Now, I'm a past president of the International Association of Black Actuaries, the IABA, and it was founded in 1992. The Organization of Latino Actuaries was next. It was founded in 2016, and many of you may be aware of that organization. It's quite small, but they're trying to promote the actuarial profession among Latinos, primarily in the United States, but I think they may be looking beyond the United States as well. And so many of you may have heard about OLA. There is now, as of 2021, there is now a network of actuarial women and allies. So that's a group that is looking at the issues of women as they pertain to the actuarial profession. And the big concern, there are two big concerns for women. One is, I think they want to see more women in the profession, but also they want women to be in senior roles. Most of the senior roles tend to be occupied by men. And so they would like to see some change in leadership. So that's their sort of mission, and they're working on that. There's a South Asian network of actuaries, which is actuaries primarily in the United States who are descendants of Indians and Pakistanis, that part of Asia that live here. And I do think they connect back to India and probably Pakistan as well. There is a LGBTQ group. It's called the SAGAA, and they want, they form a nice network of support for each other, and that was founded in 2020. And then finally, Abacus Actuaries is a group of Chinese actuaries. These are the type of China, Hong Kong, Taiwan, that sort of race and ethnicities of people. They form their own group. And these groups are trying to promote the interests of the members of the group to make sure that they, form a network for one thing. Networking is always important in a profession, and then to sort of look out for each other and make sure that they're doing well in the profession. And so I said a big change in the last 5 to 10 years would be all around DEI.
Okay, before I ask you your final considerations, I have to say to the public that I sent some links through the chat. One of them are inviting to subscribe our YouTube channel, and the other one is from people who subscribed at UF to be here watching us, so they can go through this link and sign virtually, but sign that they are here watching and participating of this activity. Here I received a message from Carla Parodi, of Argentina.
Yes.
That a great event. Congratulations to Mr. Robson, Raquel, and Fábio. And Carla Parodi, SOA Latam Comité.
Right.
Thank you your participation, Carla. And well, if someone wants to send a message, they can do that. And what I will ask you about your final considerations to finish this activity today.
Say that again. What?
Yeah. To end our conversation, I will ask you your final considerations.
Oh, okay. All right. Some closing remarks. Well, I thank you for this opportunity. I wanted to talk a little bit about the SOA and get a little bit familiar. I'm happy for the opportunity to get a little bit familiar with Brazil. I did hear from Raquel, and I'm looking forward to seeing her in Australia. The International Congress of Actuaries will be held in Sydney in May, and I expect I will see her there. So with that, I thank you all for having me, and enjoy the rest of your day, and I look forward to seeing this recording sometime.
Yeah. Thank you, John. It was a pleasure to talk with you, and the video will be there on YouTube to people watch again. YouTube offers the automatic subtitles, so translation, so some possibilities to people across the world watch and talk a little bit about actuarial science.
All right.
Thank you very much. Thank you, people who are watching us now and later. Goodbye. Ciao, ciao.
Ciao.